Hello students, welcome back. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. I hope by now all of you have become acquainted with the course structure. And also before you begin working on your assignments, please make sure that you do read the chapter in its entirety before attempting any of your assignments. That way, as we are going over the lectures, you are familiar with the information being presented and you don't get lost. Okay, reading is critical in this course for you to be able to succeed and be able to obtain the necessary information so that you're going to be able to apply to the different problems. Okay, Chapter 16 deals with job order costing. Okay, there are two primary cost accounting systems used. We have the job order and the process cost systems. In this particular chapter, in chapter 16, we are going to be focusing on the job order costing system, which basically is a system that accumulates costs for each quantity of product or job that passes through the factory. Direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead are accumulated on the job cost sheet, which is basically a subsidiary cost ledger for each job. Direct materials and direct labor are assigned to individual jobs based on the quantity used. Now, factory overhead costs are assigned to each job based on an activity base that reflects the use of the factory overhead costs. A job order cost system accumulates and records product costs by the different jobs. This results in total and unit product costs that can be compared to similar jobs, compared over different periods of time, or compared to expected costs. This is an excellent way for managers to evaluate and control costs of different production or manufacturing costs for different goods. Okay. Now I am going to be having several lectures over chapter 16. I am not going to go over every single problem in your homework. I'm going to let you all attempt some of them. There are some videos embedded within Cengage that will help guide you towards completing your problem, as well as supplemental material in your chapter with excellent examples that will help as well. Okay, these videos are just intended as supplemental lectures in case you are needing the extra help to solve some of these problems. Okay, if you, when you're working on your homework, you do get stuck or you have any issues, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I also do recommend that students form study groups to help each other out understanding the material. Now, there is a difference between creating study groups and helping each other out and doing the work for your classmates. Okay, I do not tolerate cheating. It is very important that you do your own work and that you understand what is being covered. Okay, very, very important. If I find out that students are cheating, they will be reported. So it's just very important. Okay, so let's work on the first exercise that we're going to be working on, exercise 16-2, and it deals with cost flow relationships. So it says the following information is available for the first year of operations of Creston, a manufacturer of fabricating equipment. So we have sales of $12,375,000. We've got gross profit of $5,200,000. Indirect labor of $410,000. Indirect materials of $180,000. Other factory overhead of $810,000. Materials purchased of $4,125,000. Total manufacturing costs for the period of $7,880,000. Materials inventory end of period $290,000. So using the information provided, we are being asked to determine the following amounts: our cost of goods sold, our direct materials cost, and our direct labor cost. Okay, so let's start off with our cost of goods sold. Okay, cost of goods sold. Okay, so we have to be able to calculate our cost of goods sold with the information being provided. We're going to evaluate the information. Okay. Now, the cost of goods sold is basically what we spent on this product before we sold it. Okay. Do they give us that information? No, they don't give us that information. That's why they're asking us to compute it. But they give us a lot of information that we can use to be able to calculate our cost of goods sold. Okay. The first thing we have is our sales. Okay. How much do we sell this fabricating equipment for? Well, according to the problem, we had sales of $12,375,000. Okay, and I'm just going to mark it off. That way I know that I've used that number and just for my purposes. Okay, $12,375,000. Okay, so that is how much you sold it for. You sold your goods for $12,375,000. You also know that you made a profit on these sales of $5.2 million. Okay? So you made a profit of $5.2 million. Okay? Pretty good. Okay? So we have profit. I'm going to subtract my gross profit of $5,200,000. Okay? Your sales minus your gross profit will give you your cost of goods sold. Okay? So, the cost of goods sold is how much it costs you to manufacture this equipment that you're selling. Well, I know that I sold my goods for $12,375,000. I know that I made a profit of $5.2 million. So that means it must have cost me to manufacture these goods, the difference of those two. And that would mean that my cost of goods sold was $7,175,000. So it cost me $7,175,000. I made a profit of $5.2 million, which is the total of my sales of $12,375,000. Okay? So that is the first requirement. Now, the second requirement is that they're asking us to calculate our direct materials cost. Now, it's very important that we read it carefully. It's direct materials. Only what materials were directly associated with manufacturing the product. Okay? So, they don't give us a lot of information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse through here and I'm going to see what I find that deals with materials. So I've got indirect materials of $180,000. I've got materials purchased of $4,125,000. And I've got materials inventory end of period of $290,000. Okay, those are the three accounts associated with materials. Okay, so I'm going to start off with your total materials purchased. It says materials purchased $4,125,000. Okay, materials purchased. That is the total materials you purchased during the period. Okay. Okay. Now, I know that I purchased $4,125,000 in materials, but my question number one, are all of these materials direct materials? Well, I know that we had $180,000 of indirect materials purchased in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deduct those indirect materials because I'm not interested in those materials right now. Those go under my overhead. Right now what I'm interested in is only in my direct materials. So I'm going to subtract my indirect materials, okay, of $180,000. Okay. Okay. I'm also going to subtract your ending inventory for materials. It says that you still have in your warehouse $290,000 worth of materials you haven't used. So why am I going to account for those materials if I haven't used them? They're still sitting in my warehouse. So I'm going to subtract my materials inventory as of end of period. Okay, so that would be $290,000. Okay, so there's two things I'm deducting. I'm deducting my indirect materials and I am deducting the inventory that I have sitting in my warehouse that I did not use. Okay, because that means I have not used it yet, so I can't account for it as part of my cost for the period for this particular job. Okay, so now I can calculate my direct materials cost. Your direct material cost is going to be your material purchases minus your indirect materials minus your materials inventory at end of period, and that's going to give you a direct material cost of $3,655,000. So this represents the actual direct material cost that was spent on manufacturing the equipment. Okay. So let me go ahead and mark this last one we have here because I used it. Okay. So then the last thing they're asking us to do is to calculate our direct labor cost. Okay. This is a little bit more tricky. Okay, So what do we have for labor? Well, I've got indirect labor of 410,000. Anytime you see indirect labor, indirect materials, those are factory overhead costs, okay? So, indirect labor is factory overhead. Then we have other factory overhead of 810,000, so that's factory overhead as well. And then we have our total manufacturing cost for the period. So this represents how much did you spend in manufacturing during the period. Well, let's start off with that. I've got my total manufacturing cost. Okay, and my total manufacturing cost was $7,880,000. Okay, now I know that I spent $3,655,000 in materials. Okay, we calculated that in requirement B. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deduct my direct materials cost. And my direct material cost is $3,655,000. Okay. And I'm going to deduct it because you know what? I've already figured that out. I know that I spent $3,655,000 in materials. Okay. Now, do I know how much I've spent on factory overhead? Okay. No, I don't know, but I can simply calculate it. They give you everything that you need to know. So, the first thing that falls under your overhead is your indirect labor. Okay. Indirect labor is 410,000. I'm going to add, okay, I also have indirect materials of 180. Okay, I've got indirect materials of 180,000. Okay, and then I also have other factory overhead of $810,000. Okay, so those three things. I deleted it. Let me do it again. So we've got indirect labor, sorry about that, of 410,000 plus indirect materials of 180,000 plus other factory overhead of 810,000. And then let me get my calculator out so we can add. That's 410, 1, 2, 3, plus 180, 1, 2, 3, plus 810, 1, 2, 3. That gives me $1.4 million. That represents your overhead, 1,400,000. Okay, so that represents your overhead. So now I've got my factory overhead. I'm going to less my factory overhead. Okay, so we have factory overhead of 1,400,000. Okay, so now I've got my direct materials cost and my factory overhead cost, and I have my total manufacturing cost. Okay, so I'm going to add these two together to see what my total is. So I've got a total of material costs and factory overhead costs of $5,055,000. Now I can calculate my direct labor cost. Your direct labor cost is going to be your manufacturing cost. Okay. Your manufacturing cost minus your direct material cost of $3,655,000 minus your factory overhead cost of $1,400,000, and that will give you a direct labor cost of $2,825,000. Okay. Those are the three different components that they're asking you to calculate in this particular problem. Okay. It's just a matter of organizing the information. Once you figure something out, you, like for example, in this case, we calculated in requirement B the direct material cost, and we can use that for requirement C to be able to calculate our direct labor cost. Okay, so that is the first exercise that I am going to be covering. I will be covering 2 additional problems, I believe. So stay tuned. I will be uploading some more videos for you, but please make sure that before you work on your assignments, you read. And don't hesitate to reach out to me. So that will be it for this lecture. Until next time. Thank you.